You think marrying my daughter makes you our equal, country boy? His voice hit my ears like a slap, sharp and loud in the living room's still air. I looked up. Richard Lang, my father-in-law, stood there in his tailored suit, the silver pin on his tie glinting under the ceiling light. His wife, Elaine, was swirling her wine with that polished, detached smile that rich people wear when they're being cruel. And my wife, Claire, sat on the couch, eyes down, silent. I was still holding a grocery bag, plastic handles cutting into my fingers. They had dropped by to see how Claire's doing. But in 10 minutes, they hadn't looked at the kitchen, hadn't asked how we were, just tossed insults like coins. Dad, I said quietly, I know I'm not from the same background, but, good, he interrupted. At least you know your place. Claire has a master's degree. You barely finished high school. You think owning a tiny shop makes you someone? Stop dreaming. Elaine chuckled softly. That little car shop of his? It's barely pocket change compared to Jason's chain stores. The air thickened. Claire finally whispered, trembling, Dad, Mom, that's enough. Shut up. Richard snapped. His glass hit the table, the sharp clink echoing in the room. That sound hit me harder than I expected. It was then I truly understood. In their eyes, I wasn't family, I was a stain, a reminder that their daughter had married beneath her. I didn't answer. I carried the groceries into the kitchen, washed the vegetables, lit the stove. The oil hissed, filling the silence. My knife slipped, a thin line of blood mixed with the tap water. Cold. Sharp. Real. When they left, Richard's voice echoed down the hallway, this marriage won't last. The door shut. The fluorescent light buzzed above. Claire came up behind me, voice low. I'm sorry. I smiled faintly. Don't be. I'm used to it. But that night, I didn't sleep at all. A year later, Claire was pregnant. Her parents never visited again, but their contempt traveled through every family gathering. I heard the same comments, over and over, still running that repair shop, huh? Admirable perseverance. Poor people always have that. Yeah, but how does he even afford rent with that kind of job? I said nothing. They weren't wrong, I was broke. My repair shop was small, rented, filled with second-hand tools. 12-hour days, oil under my nails, and barely a few $100 a week. But I wasn't hopeless. I was patient. I knew I was good at what I did. All I needed was one big break. That break came one winter night when I repaired a logistics company's truck that 3 other shops had declared dead. The owner was so impressed he signed a long-term contract with me on the spot. 6 months later, I had my first real savings, $30,000. I told no one. I simply expanded the shop, bought better tools, and hired 2 apprentices. Yet the Lang family dinners didn't stop. That Christmas, I went back with Claire. Richard raised his glass, smiling to the table, our poor Claire. Always too soft-hearted. Maybe after some years of hardship, she'll learn her lesson. Laughter. I stared at my plate. Claire's chopsticks trembled. Something inside me tightened, thinner each time, ready to snap. 3 years later, I registered my company, Iron Peak Automotive Solutions. 2,000 square feet. 30 employees. I was 30 years old. And in their eyes, I was still the mechanic. Revenge came sooner than I expected. On the 5th year, Richard's retail chain went under. Bad investments. Real estate crash. He was drowning in debt. He called me himself. When I picked up, his voice had changed, careful, almost pleading. He wanted to meet. We met in a cafe downtown. He was wearing that same old suit, now frayed at the cuffs. Ethan, he began, voice hoarse. I know I wasn't fair to you. But I need your help. Just a short-term loan. $200,000. I'll pay you back once the deal goes through. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching his hands, calloused, shaking. "Mr. Lang," I said calmly, "I think you've mistaken me for someone with that kind of money. I'm just a mechanic, remember?" His face went stiff. "I'm your father-in-law." "Really?" "Because I remember you saying I wasn't good enough to step into your house." Silence. Only the hum of the espresso machine. I stood to leave. He grabbed my sleeve, desperation cracking his voice. "Ethan, I'm begging you. Please." I looked at his trembling fingers. My voice was like metal. "I can't help you. I'm done being looked down on." Rain hit the glass as I walked out, his figure blurring behind the fogged door. That night, I slept like a stone, for the first time in years. Weeks later, I saw his son Jason at a business conference. The man who once called me the grease monkey was now pitching investors for his father's failing company. He handed me a brochure. "We're restructuring. It's a great opportunity, high returns once the market recovers." I smiled. "Yeah, I've heard about your project. Sounds risky." He didn't recognize me behind the sunglasses. The next day, I had my team investigate their company's finances. It was a disaster, debt stacked to the ceiling. Through a subsidiary, I quietly purchased their outstanding loans. Within a month, I was their largest creditor. 3 months later, the Lang family empire collapsed. Their properties were seized. Richard and Elaine moved from a gated mansion to a damp apartment across town. Claire told me her mother fainted from stress. I just said quietly, "That's what happens when you owe the wrong people." I didn't tell her the wrong people was me. 6 months later, I visited them. Richard opened the door. His hair was gray, shoulders bent. When he saw me, he froze. "It's you?" I nodded. He sank into a chair, trembling. You bought the debt?" "Yes." He swallowed hard. "So this is revenge?" I met his eyes. "Not revenge. Balance." He let out a shaky breath. "I was wrong. I looked down on you. You've made your point. Are you satisfied now?" I placed a folder on the table, property transfer documents. "Sign it. You'll still keep one small apartment. I'm not heartless." His fingers shook as he wrote his name. When he finished, his eyes were wet. "Ethan, you won." I smiled faintly. "No. You just taught me what dignity costs." When I stepped outside, sunlight hit my eyes. Across the street, a mechanic was fixing a car, the clang of tools echoing. I thought of that younger version of myself, grease on his hands, shame in his chest. Not anymore. Years later, Iron Peak expanded into 5 branches across the state. A business magazine called me the man who built an empire from the ground up. Someone asked what kept me going all those years. I smiled. Being looked down on. That's the whole truth. Sometimes, late at night, I still remember that dinner, the laughter, the sting of humiliation. But now, I can face it without bitterness. I was once the country boy they despised. Now, they drive past my billboard downtown, and have to look up to see my name. That's my quietest, most complete revenge.